Hi, Wolfie. Now on to my favorite part of the night. I am given the great honor and privilege of introducing my friend and poet, Meghan Miraglia. It is with sincerity that I tell you this lovely young woman has a tremendous future ahead. Get her autograph now. Meghan is a whirlwind of talent. Not only is she a gifted poet and an engaging teaching artist, she is also the poetry editor of Soundings East Literary Journal and the founder of our successful on-campus writing group. Most of all, she is an endearing young woman, a compassionate leader, and a gentle soul. Meghan is busy. She is currently a student in the Accelerated Master of Education program at Salem State and will complete her undergraduate requirements this May, earning her bachelor's in English and secondary education. Even with her many extracurricular activities, editor, tutor, head of Sigma Tau Delta, Meghan will graduate with the highest honors. Meghan's poetry appears in publications such as the Broadkill Review, Words and Whispers, Barred Spaces, Red Skies, and the 2022 Intercollegiate Undergraduate Poetry Festival chapbook. Mouthful. On the page, Meghan's poetry is illustrative and fluid. Her prose explores femininity, embodiment, nature, and mythology. Lifted off the page in voice, her voice displays rhythm, freedom, and unmistakable musicality. These qualities are especially influential to Meghan's chapbook, which is for sale tonight with an autograph. Workhouse, the foundation of Workhouse is academic research, but Meghan's poetic delivery of the material is a stroke of genius. She constructs and perceives the voices speaking from within the workhouse. It is a difficult reckoning, but one she approaches with great care and humility. We are fortunate to have her read for us tonight. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to my dear friend, the brilliant, gracious Meghan Miraglia.
Swearing up already.
Yours.
Thank you for
With
reading.
you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. Hello. How are we all tonight? Oh my gosh. Hello, Zoom people. How are you? I see a wave. This is very validating. I have a couple people that I want to thank before I read. Thank you, Heather, for agreeing to read with me tonight. Our friendship has been such a gift. Our conversations, every time I leave a conversation with Heather, my mind is blown. She is such a wise, incredible human being and such a gifted and beautiful poet. And it is an honor to know her and to have had class with her. Oh, just wonderful. So thank you for that. Thank you to Kevin and to the Salem State University faculty for giving me all the opportunities that have gotten to me to this point. Thank you for reading Workhouse. You read some of the earlier pieces, and I'm so appreciative for everything that you have done getting me to this point. And thank you to Adam and Henry for reading as well, who could not be here tonight. Thank you for taking a chance on me and giving me the position of the teaching artist. It's an honor. It's all our honor. And I want to thank all of you and all of you on Zoom for joining me this evening and listening to Heather's reading. I am so delighted and honored and mystified that you all decided to come. So Heather lightened things up for us, and I'm about to bring it right back down. So I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to be reading from the chapbook Workhouse. And the chapbook you see here is just 16 of the poems that I pulled from a larger manuscript that I wrote for my honors thesis. I'm a senior at Salem State, as Heather kind of said. I'll be graduating in May with a double major in English and education. And in order to graduate as part of the Commonwealth Honors Program, I had to produce a thesis. So this chapbook is just a small sampling. The larger manuscript is about 56 pages. It has 30 plus poems. There's also an online component through the digital storytelling platform Twine. And so this whole project Workhouse that I refer to, it's ongoing. I'm still writing, I'm still researching. And I thought it would be important to kind of lay the foundation a little bit here. So Workhouse is a hybrid creative writing research project that explores the narratives of pauper inmates who were living in Irish Union workhouses during the Great Famine. It's a mouthful to hear. It's a mouthful to say. And so most of the poems in the chapbook and in the larger project have epigraphs. So a snippet or two of research that inspired the poem that follows. And in Workhouse, I play around with Irish poetic forms, so syllabics. I play around with rhyme quite a bit. I make reference to Irish mythology, and I even play with Irish language as well. And in Workhouse, I blur timelines quite a bit. I want to lay the caveat that there was some artistic license taken. I play with locations and narrative, and I was really challenged to think like a fiction writer. I'm not a fiction writer, I'm a prose poet. That's kind of my self-assigned label. But I was really encouraged to think like a fiction author rather, planning arcs and storylines as I developed the 4 core voices that speak in Workhouse. I think that's where I'll leave it for now. If you want to get the real hot tea, you got to buy the book and read the artist's note. So to give some additional context about Workhouses, because I recognize I've spent like 6 months of my life entrenched in this and you have not. So workhouses were live-in institutions. They originated in England, and the poorest of the poor would go and apply for aid. They were either admitted or they were denied. And when they were admitted, these individuals or sometimes whole families, they would engage in labor in exchange for living there and receiving food. We'll get to that later. For men, it was physical labor, or young boys would be taught shoe cobbling or useful trade. For women, they were limited to sewing and embroidery. So these became oversaturated markets, and women and girls were exploited. And so I make a lot of references to sewing language throughout the poems as well. And with workhouses, they were brought over to Ireland, and the conditions were deliberately bad in the hopes that people would pull themselves up by their bootstraps and not be a burden to society. And that rhetoric, right, sounds pretty timely. And so I'm sure you'll find some contemporary connections. And I think that's where I want to leave it for now. I want to get into the writing. I want to start with this piece called The Black Hole. So as I was engaging in my research, I was really drawn to the narratives of a specific group of girls who lived in a South Dublin union workhouse. And these girls, man, they caused some serious trouble. When I say serious, I mean, they were breaking benches, they were smashing windows, they were burning things. They would take lard from kitchens and slick back their hair to have a really funky, trendy hairstyle. They would alter their uniforms and pinch the waists in so they could have that hourglass figure. And they were really asserting their femininity and humanity in a place that attempted to deny and revoke that from them. Many of these girls came of age in the workhouse, or they were born into the institution, meaning their mother came pregnant to the workhouse and gave birth there. And so these girls were punished by being put in the black hole. And I'd like to start there. And the epigraph for the black hole reads, "Paupers who showed any signs of an independent spirit were quickly and severely punished, and almost invariable it was the female pauper inmates who were accused of insubordination." It was always the girls. They were punished inside the workhouse by being forced to go without rations, or by being placed in solitary confinement in the black hole. And the poem is as follows. Troubled women, danger women, girls of glass and broken benches, sent for by no one, asked after by no one, who watched you as you slept at night, who gave you the name that no one calls you by now, and who prays for you, girl, when you come back with bloodied knuckles, fighting God knows who, or God knows what, when you leave with no clean clothes and come back with new scrapes, bruises you try boasting of, but press down on with your fingers, trying to reach at the bones beneath. When was the last time you were looked at in the eye? When was the last time you were believed? When was the last time you were not a problem to be fixed, a riddle to be solved, a house to condemn, a pair of hands or thighs? You came to this place at 17 or 16 or 13 or 9, 5. You came with help on your lips, and they made you swallow it. It's very depressing stuff. As I was saying towards the end of that piece, repeating ages 17, 13, 9, and 5, these girls came of age in the workhouse. Something that's important to know with workhouses is people were divided by age, able-bodiedness, and gender. So able-bodied young women would be put in one room, disabled elderly men would be placed in another. Everyone was separated. And if you think about that, and you think about Irish culture and bards, bardic poetry, things were passed down generation to generation verbally. And so what was lost because these people were separated? Whole family lores were lost, traditions were lost. People were really struggling to know who they were because they didn't have a community to define them anymore. So I really wanted to infuse Workhouse with the tenderness and companionship and camaraderie and joy that these girls attempted to bring. And so this piece, Girls' Room, discusses the friendship that I imagine these Workhouse girls tried to forge by discussing their shared experiences in that room. And I really draw on the language of sewing and embroidery, which is the work that they completed. And the epigraph reads, "Finally, those young women who were abandoned as young infant foundlings and who were subsequently reared in the workhouse. We who had no rings to bear, no jewels to fan across satin sheets in an attempt to outdo our lovers, we knew nothing of pillow talks, conversations scoured between thumbs needle pricked, corners of mouths tucked shut with frayed stitches, teeth snapping skeins into manageable lengths. We measure by unraveled instinct, nerves cut to the quick. In the dark, we fumble to pinch waistbands, act as each other's thimbles. Sister, I wore your dress, and sister, you wore mine. Brocade of body sutured as it strains against the tatting. The sky, a hunched back, stooped over these workhouse walls. We keen and keen. They keep us busy with burial shrouds. These mourning notes ring mangled. Our mothers come to the edge and drop their black veils like river water over the crowns of our heads. We touch each other's temples, grazing ghost lace with hands our mothers might have kissed had they given us names. The moon is a rib a bow. We are indecent. We pilfer skin knuckles. We trade arrowheads in the wash. Wonder if our bodies would make good homes. Wonder if our bodies would make good anythings. So I continue this theme of tenderness and female friendships in this piece, which is Eliza Dalton Tends to Her Friend Jane Kane. And when I was learning about this group of girls, two girls really stood out to me. Eliza Dalton, she was in her 20s when she incited two major rebellions in the South Dublin Union Workhouse, and they were in 1860 and 1861. She was badass. Mm-hmm. She came at the age of 9 to the workhouse and was in and out her entire life. She actually went to prison twice, and we know she eventually leaves, but we don't know when. And that's all we know about her. Those are all the facts. And so in this piece, Eliza tends to a friend, Jane, who really did exist in South Dublin Union Workhouse. These are two real people, and they may have never met. They may have met. We don't know. And in Workhouse, I wanted to put them together because I wanted to give them a friendship where they could be tender but defy together. And I think there's such a power in thinking about my friendship with Heather and having relationships where you can be open and honest and vulnerable, but in that vulnerability, you are rebelling and resisting together. And so this piece depicts Jane Kane's end of life. And there's some like gross images. So I'm just going to preface that. It's Eliza Dalton Tends to Her Friend Jane Kane, and the epigraph reads, "It is stated that Jane Kane's mother kept a brothel, and the girl was in the habit of going to her mother's house when she was out of the workhouse. What good is a body when the body cannot be bargained for? Open sores, mottle-paled arms burrow between swollen fingers. The 30 silver pieces change hands, transubstantiate into pills, fogged bottles. Corks unstop, flake and crumble in a wavered grip, broken gashes press into fibers of a shared cot. Femme fatale in a mercury cloud, lungs beaded. Brittle hips crack, ease open unnoticed, the bed an abrasion. The doctor, called for but unadmitted, waits by the door, last testament penned in his hand. A candle, puddled and flickering, shivers against its own wick. A cough loosens from a vapored chest. The blood already let shed. The door, with the key in its lock, pulls shut, hair spooled on an unwashed pillowcase. Dawn pulls its thread over the horizon, unobserved. Eliza waits for the cross to find her shoulders the center of her chest, for the final jewels of water clouded with sickness to perfume the disfigured eyelids, wet the unshuttered breath. Eliza unfolds the shroud, floats the gauze over the body, ignores how much fabric hangs off the bed, disregards how little of her there is to cover, to keen. So you're noticing probably this emphasis on keening. In my research, I learned that the Irish, other than their drinking, they're known for two things, and it's their grieving and their rebellions. And so I'm Irish. I'll talk a little bit about my ancestry later, but knowing that I carry grief and resistance as two major practices in my body is kind of weird to sit with, right? So keening is this practice. It's still kind of occurring in Western Ireland. But it was this practice where the women of the community would get together, they would wear veils, and they would scream for their dead for hours and hours and hours. And so you can hear that, but you can also feel that, can't you? You can feel like your throat getting scratchy. All of like my female identifying friends are like, oh my gosh, how could I scream for that long? But spirituality and keening come up in Workhouse a lot, and that transitions into this next piece, Dead House. So although Jane Kane is given a safe death with Eliza Dalton, she passes in the presence of a female companion. That's not the reality for many pauper inmates, most pauper inmates in workhouses. They were not surrounded by loved ones. And as I kind of said earlier, right, everybody was divided. And so part of Irish culture is gathering together. Wakes and funerals were really important. And so there was no collective mourning in this workhouse because everybody was separated. And I can't help but think of what was lost in that lack of a communal grief. Did anybody ever really get closure? And so this is Dead House, and the epigraphs read, many died without the immediate presence of their families, and the bones of these individuals are often the only testament to their lives. I have not stolen anyone's land. I did not beg the soil to grow, did not lean my face over the earth so my tears might salt its open wound, did not count calluses on my palms to help me sleep at night, did not wonder if these schisms meant I'd always go hungry. I did not envy the plants with their curled leaves. Lo, am I not owed a death that wilts? I have not behaved with violence, did not hold the spade in my clenched fist and ask for forgiveness. Yes, I only find patience in the knots of my back, in the crook of my arm. May my name be a dinner bell, a silver spoon they burn their mouths on. I have not been an eavesdropper, did not listen when dry throats called out dry songs, did not fall asleep to hunger-paying arias, crumbed crescendos. What else is a body made for but crying out? If I'm good at anything, it's begging. I did not hear the thousand natural shocks, the thousand flogs. I did not wait for the sting of skin that wasn't mine, and no, I did not sit in the cool dark, anticipating the nursery cry for a mother who wasn't me, but who might have been. I have not swindled offerings. No, each slice of bread has not been consumed in vain, not by my hands. No, I can make things last, can stretch out a tendon to its breaking point. I can make last suppers of every meal, can break fasts like rib bones. I deserve this. I put my fingers to my mouth to smell the flower, to taste a cooling sun as it wafts through the only stalk of wheat in a rotting field. So I want to return to Eliza. I really see her as a badass, and I use that word a lot with her. I feel it's important because she really wanted to be treated like a human being. And again, we know she was in her 20s when these rebellions happened, and I began to wonder how she might have said goodbye when she did finally leave. And how might these women have, to talk a little bit about our conversation earlier, made a web of wisdom and practiced feminine knowing in a space that denied humanity and femininity. So this piece is Eliza Dalton to Workhouse Girls. Originally, it was in an Irish poetic form, but I realized Eliza Dalton would not want to be constrained. She would really want to push and like sit in that contention of having a form, but wanting to break it and break it and break it. So you are going to hear some rhyme, but syllable wise and all that stuff, I'm straining, and Eliza is straining. Oh, you girls pulled taut, forgotten in the knotted thrall, misstepped into myth, often told sullen, if uttered at all. He will not wait, will not linger by workhouse wall, rattle gate for you, wait there in the hush of dusk, name vanished into river like sunken stone, body brandished, each lesion wished on, touched, then flitted over in last dregs of daylight. Your face a candle flickers over, his glassed gaze, flame wandering, then gone. Your skirt will prick with blood. You know this story, know the hurt before first swell, cloth submerged in cloudy water, carmine catches on ragged stitches, sew a father from copper rings. First steps falter in an unwatched room, you make fists, press them into your thighs, hours notch on blotched panes. Yes, I came and went, but what did I bring with me? How many breaths had run ragged, set roving in my hollow chest? Take your mangled hands and use them to shape air, shake the dust, wake your sleeping form from where it lies, ask if you were loved or seen, trace the difference. I'm going now. I mean it. You can follow. You can leave the gate unlatched. Let's not wait for the glass to drop, shatter. So when I was thinking about closing Workhouse, I'm going to read from a piece that was in the larger manuscript, so it's not in the chapbook. I do a series of poems throughout the manuscript called Famine Prayers. So Famine Prayer 1, Famine Prayer 5. And that was really my intention, to get into the theme of spirituality and God and religion that really underpin Workhouse. And with Famine Prayer 1, which is the poem from Workhouse that I'll finish on before I read the last one, I couldn't help but remember that these people came to these institutions for help and support, and they didn't get it, and the systems failed them. And how many people today go to institutions to seek help because they need it, and they're denied it deliberately? And so that's really something that I couldn't help but keep returning to. And I want to close on a poem that kind of gets at their original mentality when they were going to apply. So this is Famine Prayer 1. The mother tongue rots in my mouth. Starvation comes, a ship, a casket, a single blade of wheat dissolved. Every unfed morning in albatross I shoulder, to steal, to sleep, to steal, to dream, to steal, to die, no songs for miles. The last time I smiled, my jaw went numb. My eyes are bowls of dust. I see us splitting for 1,000 years, your footsteps cloven in two. And what are we waiting for? Brother, we are waiting to live. So that's the end of Workhouse. It's not really for me because I'm still writing it. Then you're being given a merciful ending for Workhouse. That was something Heather and I were chatting about as we were planning. We were like, why can't we write a poem about daffodils? Like, and I said back to Heather, we do write poems about daffodils, but they're beheaded daffodils. They're burning off in a corner, like, So this last piece, one thing as I was kind of in Ireland studying, my like great aunt made a book, and she had gone back and done this ancestry work and put the book together, and my mom was sending pictures of it to me while I was in Ireland. And she had discovered that the Hosies or the O'Hosies were related to bards. Those are my ancestors in Ulster. They were employed at Fermanagh Castle, and so I'm related to a bard. So not to say that I'm Irish Shakespeare, but you know, there's that. And so I think like music and sound rich poetry is really important to me. When I was talking to Heather about process, like I record myself reading my poems all the time on my phone, just the voice memo. And I'm not like shy about hearing my own voice heard back to me. And so when you think about bardic poetry, it was verbal, it was generation to generation to generation. And just as Heather is still reckoning with the ghosts of her Southern past and all of the baggage that can kind of come from that, I still feel like I'm reckoning with that past, the past of who I might have been if my ancestors never left Ireland during the famine, because my ancestors did leave. You know, who did they leave behind? They couldn't have taken anybody. What if they had stayed? Would they have made it? And so I feel like reckoning with ghosts is just a continual theme that comes up in my work. So this last piece, it's not from Workhouse, it's Jesus to Joseph. And I'm just going to read that. 1. My father of wood smoke and sawdust, hallowed be the splintered knuckles that were my first cradle, the arms that rocked me with elbows bent at imperfect angles. My father of nails and bloated oak, hallowed be the hands that dragged clumps of rotted driftwood to the shore, beached mossy branches, the tunic besmirched with bark, the body knelt in service to the roots, the form before the cross, the spirals of life within the trunk. 2. Thy kingdom of cracked vessels, thy kingdom of bowed birches and waterlogged saplings, thy quiet kingdom, thy uncrowned forest, thy form echoes throughout the woods, knotted soles of thy sandals cross thicket and coppice and brushwood, frith and undergrowth. You bend the small shell of your ear to the base of a fig tree. Thy kingdom of date palms and olive whorls, thy kingdom of pith and cambium, you say now is the time for felling. I feign understanding, and you feign steadiness in your grip of the axe, as if the cutting of a tree is nothing more than the wrenching of a waist, the slit of a blood tie. 3. Give us a moment longer, all 3 of our bodies congregating beneath the new sharpened points of a fresh found star. You tip your mouth to the soft spot on the back of my head. You once placed delicate curls of wood shavings around her fingers, both of your hands fragrant with cedar. You wanted to taste the sweat of her palms. You wanted to carve the round moon of her young face into every almond tree, if only for the tremor in your bachelor wrists. And now you have a son who's not really yours, and a wife who's only really God's, and the boxwoods are still in the Tishri air, branches stiff, leaves half bitten by lowing sheep, their blue woolen bodies stained by the inked sky. Your teeth ache as you drag your fingers along the manger's saw-toothed edges. This work is unfinished. That's all I have.